Okay, like I said, week 2 is, in case you didn't figure it out from the opening song, is begin with the end in mind. This is, I mean, they're all important, and this one is also extremely important. Dr. Covey says habit 1 is most important because all the rest depend on it. Taking action, being proactive. Um, as you recall, we will talk a little bit about principles. Principles to Dr. Covey are eternal. They are absolute. They are something you can't. They're the lighthouse. If you're the battleship, they're the lighthouse. It's not going to curve. It's standing there permanently. That you need to understand and take advantage of, and not think you can go through a principle. Because our character is basically a composite of our habits, because they are consistent, often unconscious patterns. They constantly, daily express our character. And so that's, again, one reason why he emphasizes his book is not the 7 principles of highly effective people. It's the 7 habits of highly effective people. If you don't turn the principles into habits, then you're not going to use them. You may worship them, you may salute them, you may praise them, but you won't do them. And so it's important that you learn the habits that allow you to live by the principles that make you most effective. Can people in the back hear me? You guys hear me okay? In the back? I can't hear me, so that's why I asked. Also, related to the social mirror, we talked about the social mirror last time, and this down a little bit. Our ultimate freedom is the right and power to decide how anybody or anything outside ourselves will affect us. So again, that relates to the social mirror. It relates to the way we were raised. It relates to the problems we have. It relates to our physical disabilities. Everything that we might make an excuse for why we cannot succeed, it's saying we can respond to it the way we choose to respond to it. That's being proactive. So that's important to always remember too. Peter Drucker. How many of you have heard of Peter Drucker before? Business Week magazine called him the man who invented management. That's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but his principles, his teachings during the last century were critical in learning how to manage a company properly. I know Japan depended a lot on Peter Drucker when they, after World War II, as they were rebuilding their economy, they based a lot of it on Peter Drucker's teaching. You might want to remember that name. The one thing he said was the best way to predict your future is to create it. And that's the ultimate, again, being proactive. We don't just live a future. We don't just live through our future. We create our future. We may be very busy. We may be efficient. But we will also be truly effective only when we begin with the end in mind. Why do you think that's the case? Why will we be truly effective only when we begin with the end in mind? Well, let me tell you one of his stories. I think I mentioned this. I might have mentioned this in an earlier class, but there was a team of men set out to build a road through the jungle. And they're building, they're working hard, they're chopping down trees, they're chopping the undergrowth, they were land smooth, nice channel roadway, and so they exerted all the effort they could in making the perfect road. And after a couple of weeks or so, somebody climbed up a tree and looked out across the jungle or the forest and yelled down, "We're going in the wrong direction." And people down below said, yeah, but we're making progress. So you can make progress, you can work hard, but if you aren't going in the right direction, it doesn't do you any good. That's beginning with the end in mind. You have to know where you're going. And so that's true for our lives as well. We have to know where we're going, or we're just going to end up someplace. We don't know where. We just work hard. We kind of trust the universe to make us show up to the right place because we have no idea where we're going. Not a good way to plan your future or to create your future. Peter Drucker also said efficiency is, let me bring down my video again. Let me bring it down the bottom here for now. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. I would have to read that a couple of times to understand it. Efficiency is doing things right. That's building that road, putting in a lot of work. That's making it straight, making it flat. That's doing the job right. But effectiveness is doing the right things. If you're not going in the right direction, it doesn't matter how efficient you are. You're going in the wrong direction. So the habit of beginning with the end in mind is based on the principle of all things are created twice. And what's he mean by that? Everything's created twice. Dr. Covey says there is a mental creation, the first creation, and a physical creation, the second creation. To state that we decide sorry, typo here. Anyway, the principle here, to begin with end in mind, states that we decide the direction of our life. We decide where to build our road, so to speak. It also advocates the different roles we play in life and the need to maintain a balance between those roles. So when we begin with the end in mind, we could also think back to Dr. Christensen. We talked about how we will measure our lives. I think I told you, his one of his first weeks on the job, after he got his master's degree, not a doctorate, after he got his master's degree, he started immediately working for a major consulting firm. And because he was one of their best and brightest. And so he got a really good job with a major consulting firm. And his boss came to him one day and said, we are on crunch time here. We have to get this project done. I need you to come in tomorrow, Saturday, to help us finish this up. And Dr. Christensen had the gall and the courage and the commitment to say, no, I don't come in on Saturdays. That's my family's day. He said, well, if you can't come in Saturday, then come in Sunday. No, I don't come in Sunday. That's also a family day and the day I go to church. I'm not working on Saturday and Sunday. I will work every other day, as hard as you want me to. I will work till midnight if you want me to. But I do not work on Saturday and Sunday. That's my day, my family's day, my day for my religion. Those are my days for something else. You have my 5 days, much of them as you want. Well, that's pretty courageous when you're starting your first job to tell your boss no. But that's what he did, and he lived by that, and he set that standard because he had 2 ends in mind, at least 2. He did want to become an expert in his field. He did want to be successful in his field, but he also did not want to lose his family in the process, as he talked to us in that, how will you measure your life? That many of his colleagues at Harvard University lost their families in the process of becoming strong executives. So they achieved one goal, and they brutally failed the other one. They lost their families. Somebody else is raising their kids, and so forth. So when we look at the end in mind, we have to look at our roles. One of them is our career role. We may also have a community role. We may have a personal role, a family role. You may have a variety of roles you decide on that you want to put into your plans. But if you're planning to have a family, one of them should be your family. Anyway, it's up to you to decide what your roles are. But the one is career. That's what we frequently think about. But don't forget about your other roles in life, whatever those may be, your decision. If you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you get there? Again, habit 2 is based on principles of personal leadership, which means that leadership is the first creation. Leadership is not management. That's habit 3, by the way. We'll get to management in habit 3. Habit 2 is leadership. Habit 2 is deciding where you're going. One of the stories that Dr. Covey tells is one of his students. He was teaching a workshop, a series of workshops in Seattle, Washington. And this was one of the principles he taught, taking personal leadership. But that also applies for organizational. So many of the things that he teaches, he'll talk about personal, but also it's related to your organizational leadership as well. And what this man, he ran some sort of an energy company. And after he was taught this, he started examining his leadership style. Because Dr. Covey is essentially saying if you don't take charge of where you're going, you're not being a leader. You may be a manager, you're not being a leader. And so he decided to delegate management roles to other people. And at first, other people kind of resisted this. And Dr. Covey said this happened in his own personal life as well. He had a boss who took over, and Covey was in charge of an area, I think a global, like a part of the world of the company he was working for. And his new boss came in and said, "Okay, you're in charge of your area. If you need some help, come talk to me." And he took off, basically. And so Dr. Covey was faced with a real tough situation, and he called his boss and explained the situation, and said, "What should I do?" And his boss said, he basically gave him some experiences from his own life as a manager, and then he said, "But Stephen, this is your area. You are responsible for this. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I can tell you how I handle similar situations, but you're in charge. You have to make the decision." That was the first time a boss of his had actually delegated in a way that totally gave him the responsibility. It was on one hand scary, because now if he failed, it was his failure, but it was also energizing in that now he knew he was in charge. It made him feel more responsible. It made him commit greater energy, greater mental devotion to achieving the corporate goals. That was one of the key examples for him in his life when his boss made him, not only delegated but truly delegated. Delegated means giving somebody else responsibilities, but many leaders don't really give them responsibility. They say you're responsible, and then they tell them how to do everything. That's not delegation. And so Dr. Covey's boss did truly delegate. He would make no decisions on his behalf. He would give him suggestions, give him some experience. It was his responsibility. In essence, this guy in Seattle was faced with the same situation. And so he had to convince his managers it was for real. It was no longer his job to manage the company. It was somebody else's job. It was the manager's job, separate managers, to handle their part of the company. His job was now leadership. He quadrupled the revenues of his company within about 6 months because he took a leadership role and not a management role. Many of us in leadership roles, and I'm including myself, have at times failed because we misinterpreted our leadership as management. Leadership is not management. Find somebody else to manage, you be the leader. Okay, this is a picture of a puzzle. Kind of hard to see from the back, maybe. All the little pieces of a puzzle. If we really had this puzzle here and I put it out on the floor, And I said, put it together. That would be rather challenging. Kind of like they make puzzles now only one color. You ever seen one of those? Like an all-white puzzle. That's the ultimate challenge. No picture. You have to figure out how to put it together without any picture at all. This is kind of like that. You don't know what you're making yet. All you see are all the pieces scrambled across the floor. And so if I tell you to put this puzzle together, you're going to have a hard time. But if I show you the picture and say, now put the puzzle together, it'll be a lot easier. You know now, you have the end in mind now. You know how to proceed. You know what you're looking for the outside. You know what you're looking for on the second row from the outside. You can now start piecing it together because you have in your mind what you want to achieve. You have the end in mind. So life is kind of like that. We have all these pieces and we're trying to figure out how to put them together. And if we don't have that picture, it's almost certain to fail or take us a real scramble around for most of our lives trying to figure out how to put it together. We don't have an end in mind. So before you figure out the end, though, you have to take a look at what you want. Here's one exercise to help you figure out what your end is. After 10 years, a newspaper decides to do a story about you. So now this is, instead of being 19 years old or whatever you are, you're now 29. And a newspaper is now going to do a story about you. What do you want them to write about you? They're going to interview your friends, interview your family. What do you want your friends and family, and maybe your competitors, other people, your employees, if you're a leader by then. What do you want them to say about you for this news story? Fast forward. Dr. Covey has another exercise for you to do. You're walking into a church, and you can tell it's a funeral. People are gathering, they're crying, and so forth. You walk in, and there's a line in some religions, I don't know if yours perhaps not, but they have an open casket where you can actually see the person in the casket and say your last farewell to that person. And so, anyway, you walk into the church, you wait in line, you get up to the casket to say your last farewell to the person in that casket. You look down, and it's you. You're in the casket. And now you sit back, and you're now listening to people come to the lectern, the podium, whatever you want to call it, to talk about you. So now you're not 29, now you're 59, 69, 79, whatever happens. So now, what do you want them to say about you? Now, like I say, now make it 50 years from now, and, or more. By the way, that's how old I am. I'm 50 years older than you. And so, who knows, I may kick the bucket tomorrow. So, what I want to say, what do I want people to say, what do I want you to say about me, what do I want my colleagues to say about me, what do I want my children to say about me, my grandchildren to say about me, what do I want people to say about me if that's me laying in the casket and people are talking about me, or you, as the case might be. It's a good exercise to actually write that down. Write your obituary. Write your obituary for what you want people to write in the newspaper when you pass away. Well, part of this will determine then what he calls a mission statement. You may have heard of this term before. Again, this is one of those things that existed before Stephen Covey, but now many organizations around the world adopt a mission statement. The mission statement is about what they're all about. So he says it's good for an organization It's also good for every individual. In fact, it's good for a family. Individual, family, organization, they should all have a mission statement that proclaims, why do we exist? What are we all about? That's the starting point for determining what the end in mind is for you. What are we all about? And so that's kind of the starting point for writing your obituary. What was he all about? What did he, because if you didn't know what you're all about, then maybe you didn't accomplish anything in life. Hopefully you had a definitive goal when you started, and so the day they have your funeral, they can talk about what it was that you dedicated and lived your life for. In a sense, died for. What was it you died for? What was it you lived for? Viktor Frankl, remember him? I misstated last week, by the way. He wasn't German, he was Austrian. Germany controlled Austria at that point before or the first part of World War II. And he was a psychiatrist and a neurologist. So he's actually a step above a psychologist. Psychiatrist is also a doctor. A psychiatrist has to be a medical doctor as well as to know the psychology. So basically it's a blend of a psychologist and a doctor. He's a psychiatrist. So that's what he was. So after he got out of the concentration camp during World War II, a couple of things he said is, when we are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And so that's what he did in the concentration camp. He could not control being in a concentration camp. Machine guns all the way around the concentration camp, people dying all around him. He could not control that, but he could control himself, what he thought about, what he did within that concentration camp, just like the other people I talked about, who likewise were sent to prison and came out stronger than before. But the other thing that Dr. Frankl said that pertains to what we're talking about, he said our life's mission, I mistyped that also, our life's mission is more detected or discovered than invented. Think about that. Our life's mission is more detected or discovered than invented. In a sense, I really agree with that. In that, I mean, I guess you could say both are part of it. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about in day one. Is, do you love what you're good at, or are you good at what you love? That kind of relates to how you discover yourself. What is it that I have a passion for? What is it I really want to accomplish? I gave up math and science as a young student, and those are my strong areas, to pursue writing and journalism and teaching, because that was my passion. Math and science was not my passion. And so that was when I discovered, so to speak, when I had to make a decision, some of the classes I was taking in high school, I had to discover who am I? What do I want to be? And so I stopped taking math classes, although I was, like I said, in my 8th grade class, I was rated above the 99 and 2/3 percentile in America. So I was really up there. I turned my back on that and went to my worst area of English composition, my worst area, because that was my passion. So that's one of the questions also, to help you discover what your mission statement is, what the end in mind is. What would you do in life even if you were not paid to do it? Why do you love that much? If I had become a mathematician, I probably would still be teaching. I probably would still be blogging or something. I would be doing a lot of things that I'm doing now, but I would be making money as a scientist or as a mathematician. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just chose to take a shortcut. So I figured out sooner what I wanted to do in life, and so I gave up my math to focus on what I really wanted. If I had not, I might have picked up, started doing what I wanted to do later on, even though I was making my money as a scientist or a mathematician. That's possible too. Live out your imagination, not your history. So again, that's one of those things we have that makes us different than the animals. We can decide what we want to do, and part of that is our imagination. And again, how our parents raised us, what we are like physically, the way we were born, all those other things we talked about, that's our history. That's in the past, nothing we can do about that. That's our history. We're building our road to the future. That's our imagination. What we decide we want to do, we build our future based on that. So at some point, you can rescript your life. If you're going along, and as I said, perhaps if I had not figured out what I wanted to do, I might have gone to college as being a mathematician or a scientist. I end up working for a big corporation, or perhaps the government, whatever. And then it dawns on me, this isn't what I wanted. Well, even then, I could have rescripted. I could have rescripted my life. And I could have become a writer. I could have become a blogger. I could have done something different with my life. At any point in your life, you can decide to rescript. So far, my script is up to this point. That's my history. At this point on, I'm rescripting. I'm rewriting my script. And you can do that any time in your life. Because some of the biggest successes in life have been older than me. The biggest department store in America is called Walton's. The Daddy Walton, forget his first name. Anyway, the father started one hardware store, but he had this idea that if he enlarged it, he could sell more stuff there. And so he enlarged his hardware store and started selling clothing. I don't know what all he enlarged to at that point, but nowadays Walmart stores, that's what came from Walton, they include food, hardware, clothing, electronics, pharmacies. They include everything you could want. And so they're pretty much taking over America because they offer everything in one store. But that began with a man who started with one store in a small town that still, I don't think Bentonville has more than like 20,000 people in a small town. He had a small hardware store in a small town, and it was only when he got to be about my age they suddenly decided, let's see if we can do a chain out of this. Let's see if we can build on this. And so now it is the biggest chain of department stores in all of America, one of the biggest ones in the world. But Papa Walton lived most of his life running one store. So at some point he rescripted himself and said, maybe we can do more than this. I've personally come to believe that most millionaires have only one really good idea in their life. It's actually harder if you're really, really smart and you have lots of ideas. That's a problem. You can't focus on one idea. You start one idea and you start thinking of another idea. And you have another idea, and you have another idea. It's hard for you to focus on one idea. You're really better off if you're not that smart. If you don't have too many ideas. Not all, but most billionaires are kind of like that. They have one idea and they focus on that and they stay on that line permanently. Some, like I say, some of them, even in their older age, suddenly start doing things incredible, even when they're older than I am. Famous authors, a lot of people like that. So two important human endowments are imagination and conscience. Imagination and conscience help guide you in your decision of what is your mission. What is it you want to be remembered for? What is it you should do? What is it you want to do? How can you do it in a way that will make you successful? So forth. Imagination and conscience. So, as I said, one of the things he's known for, Covey's known for, is making a mission statement. And that starts with your own personal mission statement. It probably would not make any sense to start a business mission statement until you've made your own. Because if you're in charge of that business, especially if you're in charge, but if you're in charge of a business, how does it make sense to make a business mission statement before you know what your own mission statement is? So, right now, you can build your own personal mission statement. What is my life all about? I want to focus my life on fill in the blanks. My life will have meaning because fill in the blanks. Something like that. So you might, it says here, focus on what you want to be, your character, in other words, what you want to be inside out, what you want to do, your contributions, your attributions, and on the values and principles upon which you want to build your character and accomplish what you want to accomplish. These are all part of your, should be part of your mission statement, because that's where you want to go. That's in essence what you're saying, where you want to go. Now he believes that we are, even there's the textbook we use for our history of media talks about spirituality. Now the definition of the author of that book says spirituality has almost nothing to do with God. Okay? It's hard for me to separate the two. To me, it does relate to God, but his definition of spirituality is not that. It's something. It is something, as one of our first videos talked about. It's something that's transcendent, something bigger than us that we feel committed to. And so it may be God, our idea of God, but it may not be. It could be anything that, as that gal said, talking about the 4 pillars of happiness. It could be just something that you feel is transcendent, something that you think is bigger than yourself. So Dr. Covey says we are not human beings on a spiritual journey. We are spiritual beings on a human journey. There's something more eternal to us, something beyond what we're experiencing here. If you believe that, that should give you other ideas for your mission statement. So one of the things Dr. Covey talks about is what is in the center of your life. What is in your life that you commit yourself to which he says will provide security, guidance, wisdom, and power. So it looks something like that. It's from that center, from that thing that you're committed most to, that everything else emanates. You draw on it to decide what is your wise path to your future. What are the principles you guide yourself by? What is the wisdom you live by? Because it's what you committed yourself to. Where do you gain your strength from? He suggests a number of different possibilities that different people put different things in the middle of their life. And you have to choose. What is your center? And so to him, maybe your spouse. You may be so in love with your spouse that your spouse is the very center of your life. You live for her or him. They're the source of your happiness. There's nothing else that you'd rather do than to make that person happy, and so forth. It may be family. You start having children, and now it's your family. It's the very center of your life. There's nothing more important to you than your spouse and your children. But now it's a little bit bigger. You've enlarged your circle a little bit. On the other hand, it could be money. A lot of people, whether they make that decision or not, they may not make that decision. But as Dr. Christensen suggested, some people measure their life by their money. If they measure their life by their money, then they're saying the money's in the center of their life. And so everything is about making more money so they can feel like they're a success. So some people are like that. Some people are work-centered. It's not so much about the money. I am more than a little bit of a workaholic. I think I could be accused of being this. I hope I'm not, but maybe I am a little bit. So if you're a workaholic and everything is about your work, you're going to be maybe neglecting other things, but your self-esteem, your power, your accomplishments all relate to your work. There's others. It could be a friend or enemy. It could be a church. A lot of people make the church the center of their life. Dr. Covey, by the way, or it could be yourself. You can be totally self-centered. Whatever it is, my fun in life. I'd say that's really fun, not just yourself, or it could just simply be yourself. Whatever it takes, you're the only thing important in life. Nothing else is important. I would remind you that Dr. Covey had 10 kids. I would say he must have loved his wife. He must have loved his kids. But he's saying family and spouse should not be the center of your life. But what happens if your spouse walks off? What happens if your wife dies or your spouse dies? Now your whole life is destroyed because you centered your whole life around your spouse or your family. That destroy your whole purpose in life. He's saying that should not be the center of your life. You should love your family. You should, even like Dr. Christensen said, you should set a time aside for your family if that's important for you, as he did. That does not make it exactly the center of your life. You still have a purpose in life if something happens to your family, if something happens to your spouse. And same with church. Dr. Covey is a very religious person, or was a very religious person. The university he worked at, and the one I went to school at, he worked at the university where I got my bachelor's and master's degrees, was a church-owned university, Brigham Young University in Utah. So he wouldn't have even been hired if he wasn't religiously oriented. But he said that should not be the center of your life either. He's saying principles should be the center of your life. He already talked about that. Principles are the eternal. You reuse principles. That's it. That principles are eternal. Principles are unshakable. Principles are the absolutes of our existence, according to Dr. Covey. That if you live by your principles, then you're going to accomplish success, and whatever else happens in those other roles, in your family, in your marriage, in your business, in everything else, no matter what happens in those other things around you, if you go bankrupt, if your wife dies or your spouse dies, if you have no children, whatever it is, if you live by the principles, he says you will be successful and happy. And those principles, by the way, will make you a good father, will make you a good husband, they'll make you a good CEO, they'll make you a good lots of things. But those are what should be in the center, the principles. Everything else comes around it. Everything else revolves around it. If you think of it like a solar system, everything else revolves around the principles, is what he says. So Oliver Wendell Holmes was a chief judge in our Supreme Court, very famous, also an author. He said, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. So basically, those are the principles. If you live by the principles, if you develop habits, and again, the habits, according to Dr. Covey, are what shape our character. So you try to make the principles your habits, which shape your character, which leads to success in your life. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to stop this and watch a video. Yeah. Okay. So we went through some of this stuff. We stopped here. Using your whole brain. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this, but I'm sure you've heard of left brain and right brain, what the difference is. Left brain being your kind of mathematical, logical side, right brain being your more creative side. So on the left side, like I said, logical, you deal with words, you deal with parts and specifics, you deals with analysis as you kind of evaluate and break things down. It deals with sequential thinking. It's rather time-bound. So this may be part of what keeps us on schedule. If we're really left brain, then we want to do things, we want to schedule things real tightly. Right brain, more intuitive, creative, deals with pictures, imagination, dreams, deals with wholes, more holistic rather than parts. Deals with synthesis, bringing things together, making them come together. Deals, again, with everything simultaneous and holistic, and it's kind of free of time. You're not worried too much about time. It's important that you use your whole brain. There are several ways of doing this. For me, one of them, I tell people that I think one of the most important things you can give your children is the opportunity to be bored. If your children are bored, that's when they get creative. Send them outside to play. And they'll find a branch to make into something, a bow and arrow, a gun, a pencil, whatever. They'll get creative in order to overcome their being bored. And that's good. That's a good thing. If you buy them everything they want, you buy them every toy they want, you buy them all the videos they want, all that sort of stuff. Then you never allow them to be bored. You may think that's a good thing, but that also helps kill their creativity. Boredom is good, and that, by the way, is good for you now too. What I love sometimes, I remember going to visit one of my former students in Astana, Kazakhstan, and she was working, and I was in a mall right across the street from where she was working. And anyway, we communicated a couple of times over the phone, and every time I talked to her, she said, I've got something, I wanted to come over now, but I've got something I have to finish for the boss. You get the picture. And so our getting together was postponed and postponed and postponed for several hours. And at first I was waiting patiently, and then I got bored. And so I finally pulled out a pencil and paper, and I did what I call internal brainstorming. I let my mind just fly. What do I want to go? What could I accomplish in the near future and long? What do I want to accomplish? What can I think of that would really maybe change my life? In fact, that's a question that Dr. Covey asked related to the next habit. He asked the question, what one or two things can you think of that you're not doing now that if you did them regularly would change your life? And I'll explain next week why that's important and how you schedule that. How you make sense of a schedule to make sure that you're getting what he would consider the life-changing things done in your life. Because very frequently, what he explains in the next habit is we get caught up in the little things. In fact, there's a saying, if I were not so busy doing little things, I could do great things. But most of us do get caught up in doing the little things. So why? Why don't we just do the great things? Forget about the little things and do the great things. For some of us, that's not the way we're wired. People tell us what to do. Our boss says, you have to do this and this and this. Our wives or spouses say, you have to do this and this and this. Somebody else tells us, our church says, you do this and this and this. Our parents say, you have to do this and this and this. And you're running around doing all the little things, and you never get to that big thing. You never get there. You're through these stepping stones to your big goal because you're too busy doing the little things. And so being bored gave me that opportunity to think about the big things for a while. I now could not do the stuff that my boss was telling me to do. I couldn't do the thing my spouse was telling me to do. I couldn't do all those little things that I would have done if I was back at the university because I was sitting there in a mall with a pen and a piece of paper. And so I just, and this is not the only time I did it, I do it frequently, pull out my pen and piece of paper and say, okay, brainstorm, internal brainstorm. Just think of anything I could do that could be really cool, really be important in getting to where I want to go. So being bored is a good thing, whether you're a kid or an adult. Being bored is very valuable if you understand what you can do with boredom. Just let your mind go crazy. Nothing's a limit anymore. Your imagination is an incredible tool. Release your imagination. Being bored allows you to do that. We are the creative force of our life, and through our own decisions rather than our conditions, we carefully learn to do certain things. We can accomplish those goals. So as we talk about our brain, our left brain or right brain, and accomplishing our goals, we need to try to energize the whole thing. I told you before, scientists say we are only using 5 to 10% of it. How do we energize more of our brain? How do we get beyond the 5 to 10%? I believe some of that is being bored, letting our imagination, really releasing our imagination, really letting it go. Another part is visualization. The last video we'll watch, at least part of, when I'm done with the PowerPoint, is Tony Robbins talking about the importance of visualization. But Dr. Covey also talks about it. He says if you have a goal, if you have this long goal, this long distance goal that you're trying to work for, imagine it in depth. Imagine yourself accomplishing that goal. Imagine how you would feel. Imagine yourself in that situation where they hand me the Nobel Prize or whatever. Imagine that moment of accomplishing that. The sight of it, the sound of it, the applause perhaps, any way you can imagine it. Use as many of your senses as you can in your imagination. Make that as real as you can possibly imagine it to be real. And hold on to that imagination. Hold on to that image. And reinvigorate that image every so often with your visualization. Again, Tony Robbins will explain some more about that as soon as I can get to that. But let me go ahead to that. Go ahead with what I have here. So expand your mind. This is, again, one of the things I mentioned, loving to watch quantum physics. Does it have anything to do with literature? No, but it does have lots to do with expanding my mind, challenging my mind to see new things, to consider new possibilities, even if I disagree with them. Listen to these scientists up here in this discussion group talking about us possibly being some superhuman beings. Computer game, whatever. It stretches the mind, even if you think they're crazy. These are world-class scientists, and they think this way. But somehow challenge your mind to keep thinking and get out of the box. Get out of the box. Use your imagination to think of all the cool. What are the biggest thing you can imagine yourself ever doing? How would I get there? Release your imagination and how you would get there. Let it go. As I said, involve your emotions, involve your feelings as you're imagining this in your mind. Use as many of your senses as possible. And this, according to Tony Robbins, as well as Stephen Covey, will help you to create an internal comfort zone. Tony Robbins, in the video we will watch in a second, let me give you a preview in case we can't watch the whole thing. You can finish it on your own. Describe the experiment he does on the video. I'll let you watch that. But he's talking about, I'm going to have to put maybe I can do it here. He's talking about an experiment they did. One, they wanted to see what would happen under certain conditions. So the way they're going to test it was doing free throws. free throw, and those that don't play basketball, the basket, and you during the game somehow. But anyway, it's a key part. At the end of their experiment, they had everybody go out and shoot baskets, shoot their free throws. Well, I wouldn't be telling the story if the group that you think probably did not practice. Of course, the worst were those that did nothing. Second best were those who did actual physical practice. But the best were those who did mental practice, who imagined themselves one after another making every basket. What Dr. Covey says is this helps you create a comfort zone. Is that once you see yourself doing it, it increases what Tony Robbins was saying, it increases your belief. Dr. Covey calls it creating an internal comfort zone. That you believe it's the same thing. You believe you can do it. You're comfortable with doing it. You're no longer afraid to do it because you've done it many times up here. You've done it. So you break down your mission statement into specific role areas of your life and the goals you want to accomplish in each area. Think about your personal goals. Look at your professional roles. Think of your community roles. Think about the long-term goals in each role. Start with your personal mission. What is it you're all about? What is it you want to accomplish in the long run? What do you want them to say about you at your funeral? And then start working on your stepping stone goals to get there. Going through this process also gives us more motivation. It gives us more belief and it gives us more motivation. And motivation is a fire from within. I wrote about this migrant education program I was in. The difference we were seeing in these students from being students who did not believe they could be successful in life. After 3 days, they didn't believe, started working towards it. They were after 3 days, they suddenly living in poverty, working with their every day after day, the parents do it. They did not believe they had potential to get how do I do that? My parents have good grades because I'm moving all the time. How do I get there? A migrant student. So in 3 days, their life was changed from probably half of them being dropping out to only 20% dropping out, and the rest, a good share of the rest, going to college because we had helped them to visualize in their mind that they could do it. They could change their lives. I remember at the end of each conference, there was a time for them to share their feelings, and I remember some of these. One of them was this big football player who just burst into tears, a great big kid, crying because he never thought he could do anything but be a mechanic or something. And now he did believe it. Totally, he could tell already it was changing his life from the inside out. Another one was a gang member, or had been a gang member. He also did not believe he could get there. And so he also couldn't imagine how he could be successful in life. His parents were migrants, he was a gang member. But after 3 days, he was also shedding tears as we said goodbye, and as he planned a new life. He re-scripted his life. Each of those guys re-scripted their lives because they now believed they could do it, and they had made plans during those 3 days of how to do it with our help. This is also important in creating your company or your organization, whatever organization you're in, a mission plan for them. it is important that they did a survey. This was the result of the survey. Only 15% of the employees could identify their company's top goals and priorities. They had no clue what they were all about. Only 19% of the employees felt any passion about their company's goals. They weren't part of it. They weren't involved in any brainstorming sessions or anything where they felt like their input was valued. And so if their input is not valued, they feel no passion. It's not their goal. It's somebody else's goal. There's no passion in it. Only 49% of the employees' work time is spent fulfilling their company's most important goals. That also has to do with management. We'll talk about that next week. But if 49% of your only 49% of your time is being spent actually achieving your company's goals, that's an incredible inefficiency. Most of their time, they're not doing anything that's important, is that they're feeling anyway. Only 51% of the employees understand their role in achieving their company's goals. Where do I fit into this big organization? Am I at all important here? What is it I'm doing that makes sense for the overall goal of the company? They don't know. And so in setting up a mission statement for the company, it's important that your employees be involved, that they help create some of, if not just maybe your mission statement, but also stepping stone goals. Get them involved, make sure they understand the ultimate goal, and get them involved in the stepping stone goals of how to get where your company wants to go. If they're not involved in the decision making, if their opinions are not valued, which goes on to one of the last habits is synergy. We talked a little bit about synergy already. But if they don't feel like they are of value in the organization, then they probably aren't going to be much value in the organization. They're not going to put any passion into it, no energy into it. They're coming and collecting their money and going home again. That's it. This survey helps explain why we need not only a mission statement, we need to involve our people in the goal setting, in the mission setting. We need them to feel a part of it, or we're going to have a very ineffective, a very inefficient, and ineffective, both company, organization. Okay, I'm going to turn on that last video. We won't see the whole thing, but you'll see a lot of it. And if you want to stay, I'll stay and let you finish it with me. If you leave, then you can watch the rest of it on your own. You kind of understand a lot of the important points already. I already told you.
Something can happen, come along, and give you absolute certainty, not like I believe, but where you know. In you guys' case, mine as well, we knew because we had to. Right? We burned the boats, there was no other option. We had to find a way. We weren't going to live that way. We all did it in different ways and for different reasons, but that's what that was it. If you get yourself to stay in certainty, that this is going to work, I'm going to find a way. If it doesn't work, I will make it. You have a lot more potential. Certainly, your potential to take massive action. When you take massive action, you really do something. You get great results. When you get great results, your brain goes, see, I told you from the side. I told you to work out. You have more potential. You're going to do something. That's how you want to do 300 bucks a week, 2,505 days, 200,000 a month, $1 million bucks a day. Same thing you do. And you get momentum. So you're doing what's the point before. Some people go, they go, well, but take a bunch of action. All right, I'm going to open this product. I'm going to try it. They'll say, you can do it. But it's like the salesman goes and knocks on the door. He knocks on 100 doors and says, you know what it is. Yeah, exactly. And even if he doesn't say it verbally, it's his face says it because he doesn't believe it's going to work. So his voice, his body, the execution is so weak. I was like losing my balance with my eyes closed, but I was kind of like lopsided. So I got one good visualization, and most of the time I'm like, I sure know if I would fall down on the camera with my eyes closed.
I want to just add one more thing that I forgot to mention. There was a very, very famous business consultant in America. He was the president of a national organization of business people for many years. In speaking about what to do with your mind, you've heard before your mind is one of the greatest computers. You've heard that, right? And it is. Try programming your brain. Try programming your mind, your computer. One of the ways that this guy did it, and I've done it myself, one of the easy ways to do to show that you can do it, set your brain alarm for when you want to get up. Tell your brain you want to get up at 6 o'clock. Tell it several times. Wake me up at 6 o'clock. Wake me up at 6 o'clock. Wake me up at 6 o'clock. Tell your brain that several times. And my experience is it will wake you up at 6 o'clock. I always wake up about 5 minutes before my alarm goes off. My brain already knows when I'm supposed to get up. And it wakes me up. It's very rare. I have to really be tired at night to be awakened by my alarm. Because my brain will set it for me already instantly at night. My brain sets my alarm. But you can also do it. What this business consultant did professionally was he would examine all the problems that a business was having, and he would start considering the options for helping that business succeed. And then at night, before he'd go to bed, he would program his mind. He'd say, "Mind, find me a solution. This is the problem. This is the problem. Find me the solution to this problem." And in the morning, he'd wake up with lots of ideas. Because what's his brain doing while he's sleeping? He's released his right brain. While you're sleeping, it's your right brain is going crazy. That's why you have all these dreams and stuff. Did you know that that they've done experiments? They did an experiment where they would wake people up. They'd put the electrodes on, and as soon as they could see they started dreaming, they'd wake them up. And then they'd let them go, and then when they saw they're dreaming again, they'd wake them up. They wanted to see what would happen if they did not allow them to dream. By the third day, they were hallucinating. They were seeing things when they're awake, and they were afraid they're actually going to die. You could actually kill somebody by not letting them dream. There's something about our brains that the right brain needs to release its imagination. And so what this business consultant learned how to do was program his brain to go to work while he was sleeping. You can do that. So if you have a creative project, especially a creative project, something that's going to require right brain, program your brain. Give it a try. Before you go to sleep, think about what it is you need to solve, the problem you need to solve, whatever it is you're doing, and tell your brain, solve the problem, solve the problem, solve the problem. And let your brain work while you're sleeping. It really does work. So there's lots of ways to do it. Visualization, programming your mind, just those sorts of things. Your mind is the greatest computer you'll ever use in your life. Program it, use it. That's what they're doing basically with the visualization. They're programming their mind. I went a lot further the second time myself when I was doing what he was telling us to do. Once I visualized it, my body could do it. So use it. Program your mind. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.